On the eve of the release of our new film, Police State, I thought it might be interesting to do a special episode on somebody who foresaw a lot about police states. Well, someone who had experience of police states in the sense that George Orwell, writing in the late 1930s, the 1940s, could obviously see police states in the Soviet Union. Stalin had a police state. Of course, in Germany, Hitler had a police state. There were, at that time, other police states in the world. But the genius of Orwell was to be able to see that the police state phenomenon was not confined to tyrannical societies or even communist societies. He saw that there was a connection between socialism, communism, and police states, but he thought it's possible that the West, the so-called free world, Britain, the United States, would also move in that direction. And that has now happened. It didn't happen then, but it's happened now, well, I guess 70 years later. And Orwell is the great diagnostician, the great prophet of this development. So I thought that by looking at Orwell and his kind of marvelous foresight, because who would have thought in the middle of the last century that you could anticipate these developments with such kind of eerie precision when we think of a lot of the famous Orwell phrases, doublethink, newspeak, the inversions of war is peace, freedom is slavery. Orwell gave us all that, and that's a kind of intellectual apparatus or furniture, a sort of lens through which we can now see things that are happening in our own society at a time when the distinction between free societies and unfree societies is getting a lot more blurred. Now, Orwell was a very interesting fellow because for most of his life he was a man of the left. And in some ways, this is an oddity because you have Orwell who praises socialism, at least in his early career. Now, later in his career, he never fully gives up on socialism, but it becomes very clear that he spends more of his time as a critic of socialism than as a champion of it. But nevertheless, it is important to realize that he hung on to that left identity. And I think it's because he thought that that was an identity that aligned with the ordinary fellow, with the working man. And this is really something that Orwell sympathized with all his life. Very interesting for us today because we are living at a time where the same working class, which traditionally was democratic in this country, it was the heart of the FDR coalition. Basically, the white working class kept FDR in office for 4 terms. But the same working class is now moving toward the Republican Party. And not just the white working class. We see it also with the black working class and the Hispanic and Latino working class as well. Now, Orwell's concept of a police state is something that is different than what we have now. But Orwell was very insightful in being able to see that there were 2 developments that were pushing toward police states all over the world. And the first development is ideology, and the second is technology. So let me say a kind of introductory word about each. Ideology is a kind of framework, a doctrine, a system of ideas that justifies or can be used to justify tyranny. Ideology can also be used to justify cruelty because you define people and put them into certain categories. If you put somebody, for example, into a category of oppressor, well, he's an oppressor. You don't have to really care about him. And even if he is in a hard way, even if he is suffering, you're like, well, that's okay. That's actually a good thing because that's a really bad guy. And the other aspect is technology. And Orwell was able to see the ways in which technology could establish systems of surveillance. He understood, for example, the power of the media in generating propaganda. He understood that the television would be the precursor. He obviously didn't foresee the internet, the World Wide Web. But nevertheless, he understood that there were advancing forms of media that would now allow governments and also centralized states to maintain tighter controls over human beings than had ever been possible before. In the old days, they could come after you, but you could run away, and it wasn't all that easy to even find you. But Orwell understood that in the future, running away, in a sense, would become impossible. One of the themes, of course, of 1984 is that Winston, who is the rebel, the guy who won't go along with the police state, is hunted down. He tries to get away. He thinks that he is alone. He thinks that he is undetected, but no, they know exactly where he is. They're able to get him, and ultimately they're able to subjugate not just his body, but this is the chilling part of Orwell, but also his soul. Israel is at war because of senseless, horrifying attacks from brutal terrorists targeting innocent civilians, including women and children. You and I simply have to do something to help the victims of these attacks, and this is why I'm partnering with the International Federation of Christians and Jews. This is how we can do our part to help. We need to do what we can to help children and families hit by the war in Israel. It's an urgent need, and it's the right thing to do. Help Israel in its darkest hour. Phone your donation to 800-249-0606. Again, that's 800-249-0606. Your emergency gift will help the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews save lives and provide critical essentials needed right now. The number again to call, 800-249-0606.